"Stop the ceremony!" shouted a trembling voice from the back of the crowded auditorium. Gasps rippled through the sea of caps and gowns as a young man wearing a graduation robe climbed onto the stage, his face a mixture of anger and determination. The room fell silent, save for the muffled whispers of shocked attendees. "I have something to say, and everyone here needs to hear it," he announced, gripping the microphone as security guards started toward him. "The valedictorian didn't earn that title. She cheated, and I can prove it." The audience froze. Parents shifted in their seats, the principal's mouth hung open, and the valedictorian herself, seated on the stage, turned pale. Her hands clenched her speech notes so tightly that they crumpled. The graduate on stage, a boy named Marcus, locked eyes with her. "I have the emails," he declared, raising a stack of printed papers above his head. "And if you try to deny it, I'll show everyone here right now." The room exploded in chaos, students murmuring, parents shouting, cameras flashing. The ceremony that had been moments away from celebrating achievement now teetered on the edge of scandal. The principal's voice cracked through the microphone. "Security, please escort him off the stage." But Marcus didn't move. Instead, he took a deep breath, and with shaking hands, he turned to the stunned crowd. "If I leave this stage without telling you the truth, it'll mean the lies win. And I won't let that happen." 6 weeks earlier, the thought of standing on stage during graduation had never crossed Marcus's mind. He was an average student, quiet, diligent, with no particular love for the spotlight. His goal was simple: to graduate, move on to college, and start fresh. But everything changed the day he overheard a conversation in the school library. He had stayed late to finish a history project, and the library was nearly empty. Marcus sat in a corner cubicle when he heard two voices whispering on the other side of the bookshelf. "You're sure no one will find out?" a girl's voice asked. "Relax," replied a boy. "It's all set. The scores have already been changed, and no one checks the logs. You're practically guaranteed valedictorian now." Marcus froze. He knew that voice. It belonged to Olivia Torres, the school's top student and all-around golden girl. Olivia was the kind of person everyone admired. Straight as, president of the debate team, and leader of the student council. But as Marcus sat there, hidden behind a stack of books, he realized her perfect reputation might not be as spotless as it seemed. He leaned closer, holding his breath as Olivia whispered, "If anyone finds out, I'm done." "You're positive the emails can't be traced back to me?" "They can't," the boy assured her. "Just make sure to delete them on your end." The conversation ended, but Marcus couldn't focus on his project anymore. He left the library in a daze, Olivia's words replaying in his mind. She had cheated, tampered with her grades to secure the valedictorian title. The idea sickened him. He thought of all the hardworking students who deserved that recognition, students who didn't resort to lying or manipulation. For the next few days, Marcus tried to push the incident out of his mind. After all, it wasn't his problem. But the injustice gnawed at him, keeping him awake at night. He finally decided he couldn't ignore it. If Olivia had cheated, she needed to be held accountable. Marcus started digging. He didn't know much about hacking or email tracing, but he was determined. He spent hours on his laptop, researching ways to recover deleted messages. When he hit a dead end, he turned to someone he knew could help: Sam, a tech-savvy friend who had a knack for solving puzzles. "Are you sure you want to get involved in this?" Sam asked when Marcus explained the situation. "I'm sure," Marcus said. "I can't just sit back and do nothing." With Sam's help, Marcus accessed the email server logs. What they found shocked him. Olivia hadn't just tampered with her own grades. She had orchestrated a scheme involving a student aide in the school's IT department. Together, they had altered test scores for several classes, ensuring Olivia's GPA remained untouchable. Marcus printed the emails, each one a damning piece of evidence. He knew confronting Olivia directly wouldn't work. Someone as calculating as her would deny everything. Instead, he decided to wait for the perfect moment, graduation day. As the weeks passed, Marcus wrestled with doubt. Would anyone believe him? Would he be ruining his own future by speaking out? But every time he thought of staying silent, he remembered the students Olivia had cheated. They deserved better. Back in the auditorium, Marcus's heart pounded as he stood on stage. The principal's voice rang out again, desperate to regain control. Marcus, this is highly inappropriate. You're disrupting the ceremony. Maybe I am, Marcus shot back, his voice stronger now. But what's more inappropriate is letting someone get away with this. He held up the stack of emails, his fingers trembling. The proof is right here. The audience's murmurs grew louder, and Olivia finally rose from her seat. This is ridiculous, she said, her voice sharp. He's making this up because he's jealous. He can't stand that I worked harder than him. Marcus stared her down. If that's true, then you won't mind if I read one of these emails aloud. Before Olivia could respond, Marcus flipped to the first page. His voice shook, but he didn't stop. From Olivia Torres to Nathan Cruz, thanks for changing my biology grade. Let me know when the others are done. The crowd erupted in gasps and whispers. Olivia's face turned red, and she looked toward the principal, her eyes pleading. This isn't real. He faked those emails. But Marcus wasn't finished. There's more, he said, pulling out another sheet. From Nathan Cruz to Olivia Torres, I deleted the logs like you asked. No one will find out. The principal stepped forward, his expression grave. Marcus, please step aside. This is not the place. This is exactly the place. Marcus interrupted. Everyone deserves to know the truth. Security guards reached the stage, their hands outstretched toward Marcus. But before they could grab him, Olivia shouted, "Enough! Stop this!" Her voice cracked, and tears streamed down her face. The room fell silent again as Olivia took a shaky step forward. "Fine," she whispered. "You want the truth? I'll tell you everything." The audience was stunned into silence. Cameras flashed, and a few people whispered in disbelief. Marcus stood frozen, the stack of emails still clutched in his hands, as Olivia wiped her tear-streaked face. Her voice was barely audible, but it carried enough weight to send a ripple of tension through the room. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't have a choice." "You didn't have a choice?" Marcus said, anger rising in his voice. "You mean you didn't have a choice but to cheat and steal the title from people who actually earned it?" "It's not that simple," Olivia snapped, her composure cracking further. "You don't know what I was dealing with." The principal tried to regain control. "That's enough. Both of you, off the stage." "No," Olivia interrupted, her voice firmer now. She looked out into the crowd, her eyes scanning the sea of faces. "If you want the truth, then fine. I'll tell you." A murmur spread through the audience. Some leaned forward, eager to hear what she would say, while others shook their heads in disbelief. Marcus didn't budge, his jaw tight and his gaze locked on Olivia. "It started months ago," Olivia began, her voice shaky but steadying with each word. "My parents, they've always expected perfection from me. Straight A's, leadership roles, scholarships. Anything less than the best was unacceptable. I was already drowning in pressure when I bombed a calculus exam." She paused, taking a deep breath. "I panicked. My parents had warned me. If my GPA slipped, they'd pull me out of school and send me to some discipline academy. I couldn't let that happen." "So you cheated," Marcus said flatly. "Yes," Olivia admitted, her voice breaking. "I convinced Nathan to help me change that one grade. I thought it would stop there, but it didn't. My parents kept piling on expectations, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. Every time I fell short, I turned to Nathan. And now," she gestured helplessly at Marcus. "Now, here we are." The room buzzed with conflicting emotions, sympathy, anger, disbelief. A man in the audience shouted, "That's no excuse. You still cheated." "Exactly," Marcus said, stepping forward. "We all face pressure, Olivia. That doesn't mean we get to lie and steal our way to the top. You could have asked for help, but instead, you betrayed everyone who trusted you." Tears streamed down Olivia's face. She turned to the principal. "I'll resign as valedictorian. I'll take the punishment, whatever it is. Just, please don't expel me." The principal's face was pale, his eyes darting between Marcus, Olivia, and the restless crowd. "This is a very serious matter," he said finally, "but we're not resolving it here. I need both of you in my office after the ceremony." "No," a voice shouted from the crowd. A tall, broad-shouldered man stood up, his expression furious. It was Olivia's father. "You're not going to ruin my daughter's future over one mistake." "Mr. Torres," the principal began, but the man was already striding toward the stage. "She's worked too hard for this," Mr. Torres continued, his voice booming. "We're leaving. Olivia, come with me." "No," Olivia said, shaking her head. "I'm not running away." Her father froze, clearly unprepared for her defiance. "What did you just say?" "I said no," Olivia repeated, her voice steadier this time. "I messed up, and I need to take responsibility for it. You can't fix this for me." Before Mr. Torres could respond, a loud crash echoed through the auditorium. One of the stage lights had fallen, sending shards of glass flying. The sound jolted everyone, and chaos erupted. Parents shouted, students screamed, and security guards rushed to assess the situation. Marcus shielded his face from the glass, his heart racing. Amid the commotion, he spotted Nathan Cruz, the boy Olivia had roped into her scheme, slipping out of the side door. Marcus's instincts kicked in. "He's trying to run," Marcus shouted, pointing at Nathan. The security guards turned, but Nathan was already out the door. Without thinking, Marcus leaped off the stage and gave chase. The side hallway was dimly lit and eerily quiet compared to the chaos in the auditorium. Marcus sprinted, his footsteps echoing off the walls. Ahead, Nathan glanced back, his face a mix of fear and determination. "Stop!" Marcus yelled, though he doubted Nathan would listen. Nathan reached the exit door and slammed it open, spilling sunlight into the hallway. Marcus followed, his lungs burning and his legs aching. Outside, Nathan darted toward the parking lot, weaving between parked cars. "You don't have to do this," Marcus shouted. "It's over." Nathan hesitated, glancing back again. For a moment, Marcus thought he might stop, but then Nathan bolted toward a waiting car. Marcus pushed himself harder, closing the distance between them. Just as Nathan reached the car, Marcus lunged, grabbing his arm. They both stumbled, crashing onto the pavement. The driver of the car, a man Marcus didn't recognize, threw open his door and stepped out. "What's going on here?" the man demanded. Marcus struggled to his feet, still gripping Nathan's arm. "He's running away because he knows what he did." Nathan yanked his arm free and glared at Marcus. "You don't understand. I was just trying to help a friend. By breaking the rules and ruining everything for everyone else?" Marcus shot back. "You're just as guilty as she is." The driver stepped between them, his face tense. "Both of you, calm down. We'll settle this the right way." Before Marcus could respond, a police car pulled into the lot, its siren piercing the air. Two officers stepped out, their expressions serious. "Is there a problem here?" one of them asked. Nathan's face turned pale, and Marcus felt a flicker of unease. He hadn't expected things to escalate this far. Back in the auditorium, the chaos from the fallen light had subsided, but the tension was still thick. Olivia sat alone on the stage, staring at the floor. Her father stood nearby, his arms crossed and his face red with frustration. The principal, now joined by the superintendent, whispered urgently with several staff members. The crowd murmured, unsure of what would happen next. And then, the doors burst open. Marcus stepped inside, flanked by the two police officers. Nathan trailed behind them, his head down and his hands shoved deep into his pockets. The entire room turned to watch, their eyes wide with curiosity and apprehension. Marcus stepped forward, his voice ringing out clearly despite the weight of the moment. "The truth's out now. What happens next is up to you." The auditorium fell silent as Marcus stood at the center, his chest rising and falling with each labored breath. All eyes turned toward him, Olivia and Nathan, who remained frozen near the entrance. The police officers exchanged glances, waiting for guidance, while the principal stepped forward, trying to maintain some semblance of authority. "Marcus," the principal began, his voice tight, "this has gone far enough. You've made your accusations, but this is not the time or place to resolve them." "No," Marcus interrupted, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "This is exactly the time and place. Everyone here deserves to know the truth. Students, parents, and teachers. We've been told to believe in honesty and fairness, but how can we if you sweep this under the rug? A murmur rippled through the audience. Parents whispered amongst themselves, some nodding in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably. Olivia's father, still standing near the stage, clenched his fists and looked like he was about to explode. "You're just a kid," Mr. Torres growled. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know enough," Marcus shot back, meeting his glare. "I know your daughter cheated, and I know you're trying to protect her instead of letting her face the consequences." "That's enough," Mr. Torres bellowed, his voice echoing through the auditorium. He turned to Olivia. "Get up. We're leaving." "No," Olivia said, her voice barely a whisper. She looked up, her tear-streaked face filled with a mixture of defiance and shame. "I'm not running away anymore." Her father's expression darkened. "What did you say?" "I said I'm not running," Olivia repeated, her voice stronger now. She stood slowly, brushing off her gown. "I made this mess, and I'm going to fix it." "Fix it?" her father scoffed. "You think an apology will fix this? Do you have any idea what this could do to our reputation?" "This isn't about you," Olivia snapped, her voice trembling but firm. "It's about what I did, and I need to take responsibility for it." The crowd watched in stunned silence as father and daughter faced off, their words crackling like electricity in the air. Marcus stepped forward, breaking the tension. "She's right. It's time to stop hiding the truth." Before Mr. Torres could respond, the superintendent, an older woman with a calm yet commanding presence, took the microphone. "Everyone, please," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Let's restore order and handle this appropriately." She turned to Marcus. "You've brought forward serious accusations and evidence. We'll conduct a thorough investigation, but this is not the place for a trial." Marcus hesitated. He had expected resistance, but the superintendent's measured tone caught him off guard. "And what about Olivia?" he asked. "She admitted it. Are you just going to let her walk away?" "No," Olivia said quietly, stepping forward. "I'll resign as valedictorian. It's the least I can do." The audience erupted into whispers, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The superintendent raised her hand, silencing the crowd. "We'll address her status and the evidence presented. For now, I ask everyone to remain calm and allow us to continue the ceremony." The principal nodded, though his face was pale. "Yes, we'll resume shortly. Everyone, please take your seats." The ceremony continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. What should have been a celebration felt more like a courtroom, with every graduate and parent silently replaying the events in their minds. Olivia stayed seated on the stage, her head bowed, while Marcus returned to his row, his hands still trembling. As the names of graduates were called, Marcus's mind raced. He had exposed the truth, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. Nathan's attempt to flee, Olivia's father's hostility, it all felt like the beginning of something bigger. When the ceremony finally ended, Marcus tried to slip out unnoticed, but a hand on his shoulder stopped him. He turned to see Olivia, her face pale but determined. "Marcus," she said softly, "can we talk?" He hesitated, unsure of her intentions, but nodded. They stepped into a quiet corner of the auditorium, away from the lingering crowd. I wanted to say I'm sorry," Olivia began, her voice trembling. "You were right. What I did was wrong, and I don't expect anyone to forgive me." Marcus studied her, searching for any sign of insincerity. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to make things right," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know how yet, but I need to start somewhere. And I know Nathan isn't innocent, but he only helped me because I begged him to. This whole mess is my fault." "It's not just your fault," Marcus said, his tone firm but not unkind. "Nathan made his own choices, and so did you. You both need to face the consequences." Olivia nodded, wiping her tears. "You're right. I'll do whatever it takes." Before Marcus could respond, a loud commotion erupted near the exit. He turned to see Nathan being cornered by a group of parents, their voices raised in anger. One of the parents, a woman with a clipboard, pointed accusingly at Nathan. "You helped her cheat," she shouted. "My daughter lost out on scholarships because of you." Nathan looked like a deer caught in headlights. He raised his hands defensively, his voice shaking. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was just trying to help a friend. Help? Another parent snapped. You betrayed every student in this school. The scene escalated quickly, drawing a crowd. Marcus and Olivia rushed over, their hearts pounding. Olivia stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. Stop, she yelled. If you're angry, be angry at me. I'm the one who started this. The crowd turned to her, their faces a mix of anger and disbelief. You expect us to believe you did this all by yourself? One parent asked. Yes, Olivia said firmly. Nathan helped, but only because I pressured him. He didn't want to do it, but I wouldn't take no for an answer. Her admission silenced the crowd, but the tension lingered. Marcus watched, his chest tight. The situation was spiraling, and he wasn't sure how to stop it. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the back of the group. We're not done yet. Everyone turned to see Mr. Torres, his face dark with fury. In his hand, he held a folder, the contents spilling out slightly. Photocopies of what looked like school records. This isn't just about Olivia, he said, stepping forward. You want to talk about cheating? Fine. Let's talk about all the other dirty secrets this school has been hiding. The room froze. Marcus stared at the folder, dread pooling in his stomach. Whatever Mr. Torres was about to reveal, it was clear this scandal was far from over. The room descended into silence as Mr. Torres waved the folder in the air, his expression a mix of triumph and fury. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What else could this man possibly know? And how deep did this scandal go? This school has been hiding things for years, Mr. Torres said, his voice cutting through the tense quiet. You all want to judge my daughter for one mistake, but let me ask, what about the rest of you? What about the administration that plays favorites, the students who get a free pass because of who their parents are, and the teachers who look the other way? Gasps rippled through the crowd. The parents and faculty members exchanged uneasy glances. The principal stepped forward, his face pale. Mr. Torres, this is neither the time nor the place to air baseless accusations. Baseless? Mr. Torres scoffed. He opened the folder and held up a piece of paper. This is a grade report for one of the star athletes on the football team. It was altered to keep him eligible for the playoffs. And here's another, an attendance record for a student whose father happens to be one of the school's biggest donors. He missed 45 days but was still allowed to graduate with honors. The crowd erupted into murmurs and shouts. Some parents demanded answers, while others defended the school. Marcus stood frozen, unsure of what to think. He had come here to expose one person's wrongdoing, but now it felt like he had pulled a thread unraveling the entire system. The principal's voice cracked as he tried to regain control. Mr. Torres, these documents are real. Mr. Torres interrupted. I've been gathering them for months. You think Olivia was the first student to get special treatment? She just made the mistake of being caught. Marcus clenched his fists, anger boiling in his chest. This doesn't excuse what she did, he said, his voice rising above the noise. You're trying to distract everyone from the fact that she cheated. I'm not excusing anything, Mr. Torres snapped. But if we're going to hold my daughter accountable, then we're holding everyone accountable. Enough, the superintendent shouted, her voice sharp and commanding. This is not a courtroom. We will investigate these claims, but this mob mentality ends now. The crowd began to disperse reluctantly, though the tension was palpable. Parents muttered angrily, students whispered among themselves, and the faculty members looked visibly shaken. Marcus felt drained, his adrenaline finally wearing off. He wanted to leave, but something kept him rooted to the spot. Nathan slumped against the wall, his face pale. Olivia stood nearby, staring at her father with an expression that was equal parts anger and betrayal. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice low. Because I'm not going to let you be the scapegoat, Mr. Torres replied. You made a mistake, but so has everyone else. It doesn't matter, Olivia said, her voice breaking. I deserve the blame for what I did. Mr. Torres opened his mouth to respond, but the principal stepped between them. Both of you, come with me. Now. In the principal's office, the air was thick with tension. Marcus sat stiffly in a chair, his stack of emails resting on his lap. Olivia and Nathan sat across from him, while Mr. Torres paced like a caged animal. The principal and superintendent stood near the desk, their faces stern. "We need to get to the bottom of this," the superintendent said. "Marcus, you've presented evidence that Olivia and Nathan tampered with grades. Do you have anything else to add?" Marcus hesitated, glancing at Olivia. Her earlier confession replayed in his mind, but he pushed aside any lingering guilt. "No, everything I have is in those emails." The superintendent nodded, then turned to Olivia. "You've admitted to cheating. Do you have anything else to say?" Olivia shook her head, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. "No." The superintendent's gaze shifted to Nathan. "And you? Do you confirm Marcus's account?" Nathan nodded reluctantly. "Yeah, I helped her. She begged me and I gave in." The superintendent sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "This is serious. Both of you could face expulsion. What about the documents my father brought up?" Olivia asked, her voice shaking. "Are you going to ignore those?" "We'll investigate them," the superintendent replied. "But for now, we're focusing on your case." As the meeting dragged on, Marcus felt his frustration grow. It seemed like everyone was skirting around the real issue. He finally spoke up, his voice cutting through the room. "What about accountability? What's the point of investigating if no one faces any real consequences?" The superintendent frowned. "Accountability is important, Marcus, but we need to follow due process." Marcus shook his head, his frustration boiling over. Due process didn't matter when Olivia was cheating. Why does it matter now? "Enough," the principal snapped. "This isn't the place for grandstanding." Marcus spit back a retort, his jaw tightening. He felt like he was hitting a wall, and it was infuriating. After what felt like hours, the meeting finally ended. The superintendent promised a thorough investigation, though Marcus doubted much would come of it. As he left the office, he found Olivia waiting in the hallway. "I meant what I said earlier," she said softly. "I'm sorry. For everything." Marcus nodded, though he wasn't sure if he could forgive her. "We'll see what happens." As he walked away, a familiar voice stopped him. "Hey, wait." He turned to see Nathan standing a few feet away, looking awkward and unsure of himself. "What do you want?" Marcus asked. Nathan hesitated, then said, "Thanks for not going harder on me back there. I know I don't deserve it." Marcus shrugged. "I didn't do it for you. I did it because people deserve to know the truth." Nathan nodded, then lowered his voice. "Listen, there's something you should know. Mr. Torres? He's not bluffing. There's more dirt on this school than you can imagine." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean he's got evidence that could blow this whole place apart," Nathan said. "And he's not afraid to use it." Marcus's stomach churned. He had thought exposing Olivia's cheating would be the end of it, but it was becoming clear that this was just the beginning. As Marcus walked home that evening, the weight of everything pressed down on him. The truth was out, but at what cost? The school was in chaos, and it seemed like every step forward only unearthed more secrets. He had wanted justice, but now he wasn't sure what justice even looked like. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it out and saw an email from an anonymous sender. The subject line sent a chill down his spine. "You don't know the half of it." Marcus hesitated, his finger hovering over the screen. Taking a deep breath, he opened the email. Inside was a single sentence. "This is bigger than you think." Attached were dozens of files, each one marked with a name he recognized. Teachers, students, and even members of the administration. Marcus stared at the screen, his heart pounding. Whoever had sent this knew something he didn't, and it was clear they wanted him to find out. Marcus stared at his phone, his heart hammering in his chest. The files attached to the email were overwhelming in number, each one potentially holding secrets that could shake the school to its core. His finger hovered over the first attachment, but his gut churned with hesitation. Did he really want to open Pandora's box? Before he could decide, a loud knock at the front door jolted him out of his thoughts. He quickly locked his phone and stuffed it into his pocket as his mom called from the living room. "Marcus, someone's here for you." His stomach twisted. He wasn't expecting anyone. As he made his way to the door, he half expected to see Olivia or Nathan. Instead, he was met by a man in a crisp suit, his expression unreadable. "Marcus Reed?" the man asked, his voice firm but polite. Marcus nodded. "Yeah. Who's asking?" The man extended a business card, but Marcus didn't take it. "I'm Daniel Green, legal counsel for the Torres family." Marcus felt a surge of unease. "What do you want?" Mr. Green's expression remained neutral. "I'm here to advise you to stop your involvement in this matter. The situation is being handled by the school and the proper authorities. There's no need for you to interfere further." Marcus crossed his arms. "So you're here to threaten me?" "It's not a threat," Mr. Green replied smoothly. "It's a suggestion, for your own benefit. These kinds of situations can spiral out of control quickly. You've done enough by raising your concerns. Let the adults handle the rest." Marcus clenched his jaw, anger bubbling beneath the surface. If the adults were handling things, none of this would have happened in the first place. Mr. Green's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, his professional mask slipped. "This is bigger than you realize, Marcus. Walk away while you still can." Before Marcus could respond, the man turned and walked back to a sleek black car parked at the curb. Marcus watched as it pulled away, his mind racing. The warning only made him more determined to find out the truth. That night, Marcus sat at his desk, his phone in hand. He opened the email again, his fingers trembling slightly as he clicked on the first attachment. A spreadsheet loaded on the screen, filled with names, dates, and grades. At first glance, it seemed normal, until he noticed certain entries highlighted in red. "Unauthorized grade changes" was written in bold letters at the top. Marcus scrolled through the document, his unease growing. The list was longer than he expected, with dozens of students' names, including some of the school's most celebrated athletes and top-performing students. Olivia's name was there, of course, but so were others he hadn't suspected. He opened the next file, a series of scanned documents. These included email exchanges between teachers, administrators, and even a few parents. The messages were damning, revealing a web of favoritism, bribery, and outright corruption. One email stood out. It was from the principal to an unnamed recipient. "We can't afford another scandal this year. Take care of it quietly, or we're all done." Marcus's stomach churned. This wasn't just about Olivia or Nathan. The entire school system was complicit in something much darker than he had imagined. The next morning, Marcus couldn't focus during class. The weight of the files pressed on him, each one a ticking time bomb. As the bell rang for lunch, he made his way to the cafeteria, his thoughts racing. "Marcus." He turned to see Sam jogging toward him. "Hey, I've been trying to reach you," Sam said, slightly out of breath. "What's going on?" "You've been acting weird." Marcus hesitated. He trusted Sam, but sharing the files felt like crossing a line he couldn't uncross. "It's complicated," he finally said. Sam raised an eyebrow. "Complicated? Dude, you're in the middle of blowing up the biggest scandal this school has ever seen. What could be more complicated than that?" Marcus sighed and pulled out his phone. He glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then handed it to Sam. "Here, look at this." Sam's eyes widened as he scrolled through the files. "Holy, Marcus, this is insane. Where did you get this?" "Anonymous email," Marcus said. "I don't know who sent it, but they wanted me to see this." Sam looked up, his face pale. "You realize what this means, right? This isn't just a school problem. This could blow up into something way bigger." Marcus nodded, his chest tightening. "I know, but what am I supposed to do? If I go public with this, I'll be putting a target on my back." Sam thought for a moment, then said, "What about the press? You could send this to a reporter. They'd know how to handle it." Marcus considered the idea but felt a pang of hesitation. What if it backfires? What if they don't believe me? Or worse, someone covers it up? Before Sam could respond, a voice interrupted them. "What are you two whispering about?" Marcus turned to see Olivia standing a few feet away, her expression wary. She glanced at the phone in Sam's hand, her eyes narrowing. "Is that about the files my dad mentioned?" Marcus felt a surge of defensiveness. "Why do you care?" Olivia crossed her arms. "Because this affects me too. If you're planning to do something with those files, I deserve to know." "You deserve nothing," Sam said sharply. You're part of the reason we're in this mess. Olivia flinched but stood her ground. I made mistakes, okay? I'm not denying that. But if you think you're the only one who wants to fix this, you're wrong. Marcus studied her for a moment, trying to gauge her sincerity. Finally, he said, if you really want to help, prove it. Olivia nodded. What do you need? That afternoon, the three of them met in the library, huddled in a quiet corner. Marcus laid out the situation, showing Olivia the files and explaining the anonymous email. Her expression shifted from shock to determination. This is bigger than I thought, she admitted. My dad might know more. He's been digging into the school for months. Marcus frowned. Your dad's not exactly trustworthy. I know, Olivia said. But if he's right about the corruption, we need his help. Sam looked skeptical. And what happens if he uses this to protect you instead of exposing the truth? Olivia hesitated, then said, that's a risk I'm willing to take. If he won't do the right thing, then I will. Marcus exchanged a glance with Sam, who shrugged reluctantly. Fine, Marcus said. But if this goes sideways, it's on you. That evening, Marcus received another email from the anonymous sender. This time, the subject line read, You're running out of time. The message was short and chilling. They know you have the files. Be careful who you trust. Marcus's blood ran cold. He stared at the screen, his mind racing. Who was they, and how did they already know? A noise outside his window made him jump. He peeked through the curtains and saw a dark car parked across the street, its engine idling. Whoever was watching him wasn't trying to hide anymore. The hum of the idling car outside Marcus's window filled the silence of his room. He ducked below the windowsill, his heart racing. Who were they, and how did they know about the files? The email's ominous warning rang in his head. Be careful who you trust. Marcus grabbed his phone and dialed Sam. After a few rings, his friend picked up. What's up? Sam asked. Someone's outside my house, Marcus whispered, his voice shaky. I think they're watching me. What? Are you sure? Sam's voice was laced with concern. Positive. There's a car parked across the street, and it hasn't moved for at least 10 minutes. Okay, don't panic, Sam said. Do you want me to come over? Marcus considered it but shook his head, even though Sam couldn't see him. No, just stay where you are. I'll figure it out. Sam hesitated. All right, but call me if anything happens. Marcus hung up and peeked out the window again. The car's headlights flickered off, and for a moment, he thought they were leaving. But instead, the driver's side door opened. A man in a dark jacket stepped out, his silhouette illuminated by the street lamp. Marcus's pulse quickened. The man stood motionless, staring directly at his house. Marcus backed away from the window, his mind racing. Should he call the police? His parents? He barely had time to decide before his phone buzzed with another email notification. His heart sank as he read the subject line. Come outside. Let's talk. He froze, his mind reeling. Whoever this was, they weren't just watching. They wanted something from him. But going outside felt like walking into a trap. For several tense minutes, Marcus stayed hidden, debating his next move. The sound of a car door slamming outside jolted him into action. He crept back to the window and saw the man walking away from his house. He headed back to the car, got in, and drove off into the night. Relief flooded Marcus, but it was short-lived. The message was clear. Whoever this was, they weren't giving up. The next day at school, Marcus couldn't focus. Every shadow felt like a threat, every glance a sign that someone was watching. He caught up with Sam and Olivia in the library during lunch, his voice low and urgent. Someone came to my house last night, he said. I think they know I have the files. Sam's eyes widened. Did you see who it was? No, but they sent me an email while they were parked outside. They wanted me to come out and talk. Olivia leaned forward, her expression serious. This is getting dangerous. Whoever sent you those files, maybe they're not just trying to expose the truth. Maybe they're using you to take someone down. Marcus frowned. What do you mean? Olivia glanced around to make sure no one was listening. My dad's been talking about this for months. The school's corruption runs deep, but it's not just about grades. There's money involved, donors, bribes, even threats. If you expose everything, You could be putting yourself in the middle of something way bigger than you think. Marcus's stomach turned. Then what do we do? Olivia hesitated. We need to find out who sent those files and why. If they're using you, we have to figure out what their endgame is. Later that afternoon, Marcus sat alone in the computer lab, scrolling through the email chain for clues. Whoever the sender was, they were careful. No name, no identifying details. Just a string of cryptic warnings and files that threatened to blow the school apart. As he searched, his phone buzzed with another notification. It was another email from the same anonymous address. You're getting close. Keep digging. Marcus stared at the screen, frustration bubbling inside him. Who are you? He muttered under his breath. To his surprise, a second email arrived almost immediately. This time, it contained a single line. Someone who knows the truth. That evening, Marcus, Sam, and Olivia met in a secluded corner of the local park. Marcus shared the latest emails, and they brainstormed their next move. We can't just sit here and wait for the next message, Sam said. We need to figure out who's behind this. But how? Olivia asked. They're using an anonymous address. It's not like we can just trace it. Marcus thought for a moment, then said, what if we bait them? Send a reply asking for more information and see if they slip up. That's risky, Sam said. If they're dangerous, they might retaliate. Do we have a choice? Marcus asked. They already know where I live. If we don't do something, they're just going to keep pushing. Reluctantly, they agreed. Marcus crafted a reply. If you know the truth, prove it. Who are you, and why did you send me these files? He hit send and waited, his heart pounding. Minutes passed, then an hour, but no response came. Frustrated and exhausted, the group disbanded, agreeing to regroup the next day. At midnight, Marcus's phone buzzed with a new email. This one was different. The subject line read, "You asked for proof." Inside was a link to a secure folder. Marcus hesitated, his finger hovering over the screen. Finally, he clicked the link. The folder contained surveillance footage, grainy but clear enough to recognize faces. He gasped. The footage showed a meeting in what looked like the principal's office. The principal, Mr. Torres, and several other adults sat around a table, discussing something in hushed tones. Marcus strained to make out the audio. We need to make sure this doesn't get out, the principal said. If it does, we're all finished. Mr. Torres leaned forward, his face tense. I've already cleaned up most of the records, but we can't afford any loose ends. Marcus's heart raced. Mr. Torres wasn't just investigating the school. He was part of the corruption. Another voice in the video spoke up. What about the student? The one with the files? The principal shook his head. We'll deal with him if we have to. Marcus felt like the ground had been ripped out from under him. He wasn't just uncovering a scandal. He was a target. The video ended, leaving Marcus staring at his screen in shock. His phone buzzed again with another email. Now you know what you're up against. Marcus couldn't move. His mind raced, replaying the chilling words from the video. We'll deal with him if we have to. The principal, Mr. Torres, and others, powerful people he once thought were untouchable, were plotting to cover up their secrets. And now, Marcus was squarely in their crosshairs. He locked his phone and leaned back in his chair, trying to steady his breathing. How had it come to this? All he wanted was to expose Olivia's cheating, but now it felt like he had stumbled into a labyrinth of lies and corruption that stretched far beyond her. The weight of it pressed on him, but he knew he couldn't back down now. The next morning, Marcus arrived at school on edge. Every glance from a teacher, every whispered conversation in the hallways, felt like a threat. He met Sam and Olivia in their usual spot in the library, his face pale and his eyes darting nervously. What's wrong? Sam asked, immediately noticing Marcus's unease. Marcus handed him the phone and replayed the surveillance footage. Sam's jaw dropped as the video ended. Olivia sat frozen, her face ashen. My dad, she whispered. He's part of it. Marcus nodded grimly. He's not just part of it. He's cleaning up their mess. And they know about the files. They're watching me. Sam ran a hand through his hair, his expression grim. This isn't just about the school anymore. These people are dangerous. Olivia looked up, guilt and fear etched into her face. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he was involved like this. He told me he was trying to protect me. Protect you? Marcus said, his voice rising. He's protecting himself and everyone else in that video. And now we're caught in the middle. The three of them huddled together, debating their next move. Olivia hesitated before speaking. We need leverage. Leverage? Sam repeated, skeptical. Against people like this? Are you serious? Olivia nodded. Think about it. If they're willing to go this far to cover their tracks, then there's more they're hiding. If we find it, we can expose everything. They won't risk coming after us if we hold the entire truth. And how do you suggest we do that? Marcus asked. It's not like they're going to hand over more evidence. Olivia bit her lip, hesitating before replying. My dad keeps files on everything. Records, deals, even communications. If we can get into his office at home, we might find something. Marcus and Sam exchanged a look. It was risky, but they didn't have many options. When? Marcus asked. Tonight, Olivia said, her voice resolute. I'll distract him while you two search. That evening, Marcus and Sam found themselves crouched behind a row of hedges outside the Torres mansion. The sprawling house loomed above them, its windows glowing softly in the twilight. Olivia had left the front door unlocked, as planned, and was keeping her father occupied in the living room. You sure about this? Sam whispered. No, Marcus admitted, but we don't have a choice. They slipped inside, moving silently through the grand foyer. The house was eerily quiet, the sound of their footsteps muffled by thick carpets. Olivia had told them her father's office was on the second floor, at the end of the hallway. They made their way upstairs, their hearts pounding with every creak of the wooden steps. The office door was slightly ajar. Marcus pushed it open cautiously, revealing a sleek desk cluttered with papers and a locked filing cabinet in the corner. We need to hurry, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sam pulled out a small toolkit from his backpack and began working on the cabinet's lock. Marcus sifted through the papers on the desk, searching for anything useful. His hands trembled as he flipped through documents, financial records, emails, meeting notes. Got it, Sam whispered, the lock clicking open. He rifled through the cabinet, pulling out folders labeled with names and dates. Marcus, look at this. Marcus joined him, his eyes scanning the files. They contained detailed records of grade changes, donations, and payouts to various people, including parents and local officials. But one file stood out, contingency plans. Inside was a list of names, including Marcus's, alongside notes about how to neutralize potential threats. Marcus felt his blood run cold. They're planning to silence us, he said, his voice shaking. We need to get out of here. Before Sam could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Someone was coming. Marcus and Sam froze, their hearts pounding in unison. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the faint sound of voices. They scrambled to hide, slipping into a dark corner of the room just as the office door swung open. Mr. Torres stepped inside, his face grim. He was on the phone, his voice low but urgent. Yes, I know, but the files might already be compromised. We need to act now. Marcus held his breath, his palms sweating. Sam's eyes were wide with fear, and Marcus could tell he was thinking the same thing. They were trapped. Mr. Torres walked to his desk, oblivious to their presence. He opened a drawer and pulled out a sleek black folder. I don't care what it takes, he continued. Make sure that kid doesn't have the chance to go public. Marcus's mind raced. He needed to get out of there, but any movement risked drawing attention. Mr. Torres lingered for a moment, then turned and left the room, his footsteps fading down the hallway. Marcus exhaled, his body sagging with relief. We need to go. Now. They gathered as many files as they could carry, stuffing them into Sam's backpack. Moving quickly but quietly, they retraced their steps, every shadow and creak of the house setting their nerves on edge. They made it to the front door, but as they stepped outside, a voice stopped them cold. And where do you think you're going? They turned to see Mr. Torres standing on the porch, his phone in one hand and a gun in the other. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with fury. Put the bag down, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Now. Marcus's heart pounded as he tried to think of a way out. Sam froze, his hands trembling. They were caught, and there was no escape. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Mr. Torres said, stepping closer. "You've just made the biggest mistake of your lives." The porch was eerily silent, save for the distant chirp of crickets. Marcus's breath caught in his throat as Mr. Torres stepped closer, his grip on the gun steady. Sam stood frozen, the backpack dangling precariously from his shoulder. "Put the bag down," Mr. Torres repeated, his voice cold and commanding. Marcus raised his hands slowly, his mind racing for a solution. "Mr. Torres, listen to me," he said, his voice trembling. "We're not trying to hurt anyone. We just want the truth to come out." "The truth?" Mr. Torres scoffed, his expression twisting into a sneer. "You don't even know what you're dealing with. You think this is some schoolyard scandal? It's so much bigger than that. What are you so afraid of?" Marcus asked, his voice growing steadier despite his fear. "If you're innocent, why not let the files speak for themselves?" "Innocent?" Mr. Torres laughed bitterly. "You're a naive little boy playing with fire. You don't realize how many lives you'll ruin with your self-righteous crusade, including your own." "Then tell us the truth," Marcus said, stepping forward cautiously. "What's really going on?" Mr. Torres's eyes flickered with something, hesitation, maybe even guilt, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You don't get to ask questions," he snapped. "Drop the bag and walk away. This is your last warning." Sam's voice, small and shaky, broke the tense silence. "We can't do that." Mr. Torres's jaw tightened. His hand shifted slightly on the gun, and Marcus's stomach dropped. Just then, a new voice cut through the tension. "Dad, stop." Olivia appeared in the doorway, her face pale and tear-streaked. She moved between her father and the boys, holding up her hands. "This isn't the way to fix this. Olivia, go back inside," Mr. Torres said, his voice sharp. "This doesn't concern you." "Yes, it does," she shouted, her voice cracking. "You're trying to protect me, but all you're doing is making things worse. If you hurt them, there's no coming back from it." Mr. Torres faltered, his grip on the gun loosening slightly. "You don't understand." "I understand enough," Olivia interrupted, her eyes blazing. "I understand that you've been lying to me my whole life. I thought you were helping me, but you've been using me. And now you're trying to use them, too." Marcus and Sam exchanged a quick glance. This was their moment. In the chaos of Olivia's confrontation with her father, Marcus nudged Sam. "Run," he whispered. Sam hesitated, his eyes wide, but Marcus gave him a shove. Together, they bolted down the porch steps and into the yard. Mr. Torres shouted after them, his voice raw with anger, but Olivia grabbed his arm. "Don't," she pleaded. "Please, just let them go." For a moment, Marcus thought they were in the clear, but headlights suddenly illuminated the driveway. A black SUV pulled in, blocking their path to the street. Two men in suits stepped out, their faces stern and unyielding. "Grab them," Mr. Torres barked, his voice carrying over the distance. The men advanced, and Marcus felt panic clawing at his chest. Sam clutched the backpack tightly, his breathing ragged. "What do we do?" he gasped. "This way," Marcus hissed, pulling Sam toward the side of the house. They sprinted through the yard, ducking behind hedges and cutting through a narrow gap between the Torres property and the neighboring house. The men shouted behind them, their footsteps pounding in pursuit. They ran for what felt like hours, zigzagging through backyards and alleys. Finally, they reached a secluded park and collapsed onto a bench, gasping for air. Sam dropped the backpack onto the ground, clutching his knees as he tried to catch his breath. "That was insane," he wheezed. Marcus nodded, his chest heaving. "We need to find somewhere safe to go. They won't stop looking for us." Sam opened the backpack and pulled out the files. "Do you think there's enough in here to expose them?" "There has to be," Marcus said, though doubt gnawed at him. "We'll have to go through everything tonight." Sam hesitated, then asked the question that had been hanging in the air. "What if they find us before we can do anything?" Marcus looked at him, his expression grim. "Then we make sure someone else knows the truth. Even if we don't get out of this, The story has to. The two of them made their way to an abandoned building on the edge of town, a place they had used as a hangout spot in the past. It was quiet and secluded, the perfect place to regroup. Marcus spread the files out on the floor, using his phone's flashlight to sift through the contents. The more they read, the darker the picture became. The files detailed years of corruption, embezzlement, bribery, threats. It wasn't just about grades, it was about power and control. Donations from wealthy families came with strings attached, and those who didn't comply were quietly pushed out. Marcus's hands shook as he held up a memo addressed to the principal. It read, "Ensure the Torres deal goes through. No exceptions." What deal? Marcus muttered, scanning the rest of the document. It referenced land acquisitions, development projects, and contracts worth millions of dollars. This isn't just about the school, Sam said, his voice barely a whisper. This is about money. Big money. Marcus nodded, his stomach churning. We need to get this to someone who can help. The police, the press, anyone. Before they could decide their next move, a loud noise shattered the silence. The sound of glass breaking echoed through the building. Marcus and Sam froze, their hearts pounding. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, slow and deliberate. They found us, Marcus whispered. Sam grabbed the files and stuffed them back into the backpack. What do we do? Before Marcus could answer, the door burst open, and a shadowy figure stepped inside. The shadowy figure stood in the doorway, their outline illuminated by the faint moonlight filtering through the broken windows. Marcus and Sam froze, their breath caught in their throats. The figure took a step closer, and the light revealed their face. It was Olivia. What are you doing here? Marcus hissed, his voice sharp with a mixture of fear and anger. You scared us half to death. Olivia raised her hands in a calming gesture, her face pale and her eyes darting nervously around the room. I'm sorry, but you don't have much time. My dad knows you have the files, and he's sending people to find you. Sam groaned, clutching the backpack protectively. We already figured that out when we were running for our lives. Olivia stepped forward, her voice urgent. You don't understand. They're not just trying to scare you anymore. They're going to destroy those files, no matter what it takes. You have to get them out of here. Why are you helping us? Marcus asked, narrowing his eyes. You're part of this, too. I'm trying to fix it, Olivia said, her voice breaking. I know I've been part of the problem, but I didn't know how deep this went until tonight. My dad isn't just protecting me. He's protecting himself and everyone tied to this mess. If those files get out, he loses everything. Marcus stared at her, trying to gauge her sincerity. And you're okay with that? Olivia nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. If it means doing the right thing, yes. Sam frowned, still clutching the backpack. So what's your plan? We can't just walk into the police station and hand this over. They might be in on it, too. I know someone who can help, Olivia said. A journalist. She's been trying to expose corruption in this town for years, but she's never had enough evidence to make anything stick. These files could change that. Marcus exchanged a glance with Sam. It was a risky plan, but they didn't have many other options. Where do we find her? She works out of a small office downtown, Olivia said. I'll take you there, but we need to move fast. My dad's men could show up any minute. The three of them slipped out of the building and into the darkness. Olivia had parked her car a few blocks away, and they hurried toward it, keeping to the shadows. Marcus's heart pounded with every step, his ears straining for the sound of approaching footsteps or engines. When they reached the car, Olivia unlocked the doors, and they piled in. She started the engine and pulled onto the empty street, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. Are you sure this journalist can be trusted? Marcus asked. Yes, Olivia said without hesitation. Her name's Lisa Harper. She's been a thorn in my dad's side for years. If anyone can get the truth out, it's her. The car sped through the quiet streets, the tension inside palpable. Every passing car made Marcus flinch. Every shadow on the sidewalk seemed to move. He clutched the backpack tightly, the weight of its contents pressing down on him. They arrived at a small, nondescript office building on the edge of downtown. The sign above the door read, Harper Investigative Journalism. Olivia parked the car around the back, and they hurried inside. The office was dimly lit, with stacks of papers and filing cabinets lining the walls. A woman in her late 40s sat at a cluttered desk, typing furiously on a laptop. She looked up as they entered, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Olivia Torres," the woman said, standing and crossing her arms. "What are you doing here? And who are these kids?" "There's no time to explain," Olivia said, her voice urgent. "We have something you need to see." Lisa Harper eyed them warily, but gestured for them to sit. Marcus handed her the backpack, and she opened it, her expression shifting from skepticism to shock as she flipped through the files. This is huge," Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. "Where did you get this?" Marcus hesitated, but Olivia answered for him. "My dad and the school administration. They've been covering up corruption for years. Bribes, threats, grade tampering. It's all in there." Lisa's face hardened with determination. "If even half of this is true, it's enough to blow the lid off the entire system. Can you publish it?" Marcus asked. "Can you make sure everyone sees it?" Lisa nodded. "I'll need time to verify everything, but yes. Once this hits the press, they won't be able to bury it." Before they could celebrate, the sound of tires screeching outside made them freeze. Marcus peeked through the blinds and felt his stomach drop. A black SUV had pulled up, and two men were stepping out, their movements deliberate and focused. "They're here," Marcus whispered. Lisa sprang into action, locking the door and pulling down the blinds. "How did they find us?" Olivia looked down, guilt flashing across her face. "They must have tracked my car." Lisa cursed under her breath. "We don't have much time. I'll start uploading these files to a secure server. You three, find another way out." "There's a back exit," Olivia said. "Come on." Marcus, Sam, and Olivia moved quickly through the office, their footsteps muffled by the carpet. They reached the back door, but just as they were about to open it, the sound of heavy boots echoed down the hallway. "They're coming," Sam hissed. Marcus looked around frantically and spotted a supply closet. "In there. Hurry." They piled into the cramped space, their breathing shallow. The footsteps grew louder, stopping just outside the door. Marcus held his breath, his heart hammering in his chest. The door creaked open, and a voice growled, "Search the building. They're here somewhere." Minutes felt like hours as they waited in the dark. Finally, the footsteps retreated, and the sound of doors slamming signaled the men's departure. Marcus exhaled shakily, his body trembling with adrenaline. "We need to get out of here," he whispered. They emerged from the closet and made their way back to the main office, where Lisa was frantically typing on her laptop. "The files are uploading," she said. "Once they're online, there's no taking them down." "What about us?" Marcus asked. "They'll come after us again." Lisa looked at him, her expression serious. "I'll make sure the story goes public, but you need to lay low. Go somewhere they can't find you." "Where?" Sam asked, his voice tinged with panic. "They found us here. They'll find us anywhere." Before anyone could answer, the building shook with the sound of breaking glass. Marcus turned just in time to see the front window shatter as one of the men climbed inside, his eyes locked on them. "Run!" Lisa shouted. The man climbing through the shattered window moved quickly, his eyes scanning the room. Lisa shoved a stack of files into a drawer and locked it before standing her ground. "You can't stop this," she said, her voice defiant. "The files are already uploading." The man didn't respond. Instead, he reached for a radio clipped to his belt. "They're here. I'll handle it." Marcus, Sam, and Olivia didn't wait for what came next. They bolted toward the back door, their footsteps pounding against the floor as adrenaline coursed through their veins. Another crash echoed behind them, more men entering the building. "They're everywhere," Sam shouted, panic in his voice. "This way," Olivia called, leading them down a side hallway. The hallway ended at a fire escape. Marcus pushed open the heavy door, the cool night air hitting him like a slap. They scrambled down the metal stairs, the clanging echoing in the stillness. Marcus's heart pounded in his ears as they reached the alley below. A black SUV screeched to a stop at the end of the alley, blocking their path. Two men jumped out, each holding batons. The group skidded to a halt, their escape cut off. We're trapped. Sam gasped, clutching the backpack. Marcus looked around, his mind racing. The men advanced slowly, their eyes cold and calculating. Then, from the shadows, another figure emerged. Enough. Olivia's father stepped into the dim light, his face a mask of fury. Hand over the files, and no one gets hurt. Olivia stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. Dad, stop. You can't fix this by threatening people. This isn't about fixing it, Mr. Torres snapped. It's about survival. Do you have any idea what will happen if those files go public? People will lose everything. Their jobs, their families, their lives. They should, Olivia said, tears streaming down her face. You always told me to do what's right, but you're the one who's been lying. I can't be part of this anymore. Mr. Torres faltered, his expression flickering with something like regret. Olivia, you don't understand. No, you don't understand, she shouted. You've been protecting people who don't deserve it. And for what? Money? Power? It's not worth it. For a moment, her father said nothing. Then he sighed, his shoulders slumping. It doesn't matter anymore. Hand over the files, or they'll take them by force. Marcus stepped forward, gripping the backpack tightly. You're too late. The files are already uploading. Even if you stop us, the truth will come out. Mr. Torres's eyes widened, and he turned toward Lisa's office building. Realizing the implications, he barked orders to his men. Go. Shut it down. The two men sprinted toward the fire escape, leaving Marcus, Olivia, and Sam alone with Mr. Torres. The tension was suffocating, but Olivia seized the moment. Dad, she said, her voice soft now. It's over. Let it go. Mr. Torres's face crumpled. For the first time, he looked less like a powerful man and more like a father who had lost his way. I was trying to protect you, he whispered. I know, Olivia said. But this isn't the way. Inside the office, Lisa worked furiously. The files were almost fully uploaded, but the men were closing in. She locked the door, her hands shaking as she typed the final commands. Just as the men reached the door, the upload completed. A notification flashed on her screen. Files successfully uploaded. Lisa stood and faced the door as it burst open. The men stormed in, their faces twisted in rage. You're too late, she said, a smirk tugging at her lips. It's done. One of the men smashed her laptop in frustration, but it didn't matter. The files were already online. Back in the alley, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and felt a surge of relief. It's done, he said. The files are live. Mr. Torres stared at him, a mixture of defeat and resignation in his eyes. You don't know what you've started, he said quietly. This will ruin more lives than you realize. Maybe, Marcus replied, but it's the right thing to do. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Someone had called the police. Mr. Torres stepped back, his hands raised. Go. Before they get here. Olivia hesitated, then nodded. Goodbye, Dad. The three of them slipped away into the night as the police arrived, their flashing lights illuminating the chaos. From a safe distance, they watched as officers entered the building, arresting Mr. Torres and his men. Lisa emerged with the police, her expression a mix of exhaustion and triumph. Do you think this is really over? Sam asked as they walked away. No, Marcus said, his voice steady. But it's a start. The fallout from the files was immediate. News outlets picked up the story within hours, and the evidence spread like wildfire across social media. The principal, Mr. Torres, and several others were arrested on charges ranging from embezzlement to bribery. The school board was forced to resign, and an independent investigation uncovered even more corruption. Olivia publicly apologized for her role in the scandal and worked with Lisa to ensure that the victims of the system were heard. Sam stayed by Marcus's side as the dust settled, though neither of them ever felt truly safe. Months later, Marcus stood outside the school, watching as workers removed the old sign from the building. A new administration had taken over, promising transparency and accountability. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Olivia walked up beside him, her expression thoughtful. You did it, she said. You changed everything. We did it, Marcus corrected. And it's not over yet. She nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. No, it's not. But at least now we have a chance. As they stood there, the weight of the past few months slowly lifted. The fight for the truth had cost them more than they'd ever imagined. But in the end, it was worth it. The truth was out, and for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt free.